The way we take care of ourselves is ever evolving.
And what we know for sure is that our mind and spirit are linked to our physical body.
And that our wellness seems to extend into our communities and the planet we all share.
It is very, very clear that wellness is interconnected.
We love spending time with you to explore and practice the breakthroughs, the insights, and the passions of incredible people helping us all see the world in a whole new light.
This is Health Gig.
So today on Health Gig, we have Jessica Long, and Tricia and I have been really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome to Health Gig, Jessica.
Oh, thank you so much.
And congratulations, like hugely congratulations for everything that you accomplished in Paris.
Thank you. It really was amazing. Truly exceeded my wildest expectations. I actually have the medal.
Oh,
great.
Wow.
So it's really
That's
cool.
beautiful.
But yeah.
Wow.
Thank
How are you feeling now that you're back?
It's pretty wild because, you are part of this incredible high. I was in Germany and then Paris, and I've been with people 24/7 for 5 weeks. But I've been by myself the last couple of days. My husband's still working, but it feels amazing. It's just so many emotions I'm still processing, but just so grateful that I came away with 2 gold medals.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
fabulous.
It's just, we're so proud. Thank you for
Yes,
making
we
us all
are.
so proud.
So before we get into more about that, your life story is remarkable. And there's a lot there. So we thought we could begin by if you could give us a general overview of your life, sort of as a foundation for our discussion, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's a great start. Well, I was born to a 16-year-old Russian girl in Siberia, Russia, and due to my birth defect I was born with, called fibular hemimelia, she put me up in an orphanage. And around that time, my now parents, Steve and Beth Long from Baltimore, Maryland, had 2 kids, wanted a larger family, found out about me and my brother in the same orphanage. We weren't biological. So we were adopted in March of 1993, and then they had another miracle baby. And then another miracle baby. So 6 kids. Both of my legs were amputated when I was 18 months old. And I was fitted with prosthetic legs almost immediately and learned to walk and just had this determination in me that, I just wasn't going to give up. And that determination was amazing when my parents put me into sports. I did gymnastics first, but that led me to swimming. And here I am 20 some years later, a successful Paralympic athlete and still doing what I love.
Wow,
So-
but a lot happened in
A lot.
between.
A lot.
Your parents must be amazing, and I know we're going to talk about them.
Yes. Yeah. No, I absolutely love them. They're wonderful.
So with your surgery when you were little, there were many more surgeries to follow. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. So, with what I was born with, fibular hemimelia, I did have a foot on each side with 3 toes. So, basically, I was missing the fibula bone. And I think it's incredible, right? We talked about my parents being incredible, is that when they got word of me, this little girl in Russia, they said she needs to be I needed to be adopted very quickly with my leg deformities. I mean, when you just think about it, right? My parents actually never even saw what my legs look like. They just went into it with completely blind faith and they just said, if this little girl needs help, we're going to help her. So, yes, I was adopted, born without my legs, and I was adopted at 13 months. But at 18 months old, both of my little feet were amputated so I could wear prosthetic legs. And I'm so grateful for that because my parents really thought more cosmetic looking. They were like, we just thought you'd want the foot gone. But they talk a lot about how much they fell in love with that little foot, my little feet with 3 toes. But growing up, I did have a lot of surgeries. And that's one thing that I don't think they realized with fibular hemimelia is that basically my bone would continue to grow and almost start to curve. And I'd had that bone come through my skin a few times. I think for me, surgeries just always felt like it confirmed that I was a burden, right? It just confirmed that I was different. I didn't want to be different, right? I didn't want to be born without legs. I didn't want to have to go into surgeries. And I talk about this in the book, but just I knew what to do to climb onto the operating table. I knew my doctors, I knew my nurses. And I think for me, sometimes I look back, I'm like, was I always determined or did I not have a choice? I definitely didn't have a choice and I wasn't going to let my legs stop me. But those were really hard times and a lot of questions of why.
And also, you talk about that you didn't want people close to you. You're like, I'm fine, even as a little girl, right? Like as a little baby girl, a 4-year-old. You're like, no, I'm good. You don't need to hug me.
I do think that's the adoption though, right? When you learn like
Oh,
the first
yeah.
12 months of development, and I've learned this a lot more as I've gotten older with therapy, I didn't get that. I didn't get skin to skin. I didn't get to trust another human, right? In the orphanage, my mom actually said when we came to the Baltimore, my brother and I were like silent. Like we didn't even cry. Like we just, even if you cry, no one comes for you. So even as I've gotten older, right, I've had to work really hard, even with just my husband, because physical touch doesn't make sense to me, right? As a child, as I grew up. So I didn't learn that. I didn't want it, but I remember observing my two little siblings and being like, wow, like I don't comprehend that, but it makes sense with being adopted.
Thank you for explaining that. So it does make sense. And all the information that you've gotten, like your parents falling in love with your little feet and all of that, was that throughout the years that you guys would talk about this, or how did it go? Like, what was the conversations like as a little one?
For me, adoption, I think we have to recognize that adoption is so hard, right? It's really hard for all parties involved. And even though my parents got this beautiful thing, right? They got me as a baby and they were so wonderful. And something I've learned as I've gotten older is that nobody asked me what I wanted, right? I was a baby. And all I've ever been told is how wonderful and positive it was. And it is, but it really still is such a tragedy for me. Like there was a lot of hard moments. And it was never this way in my household. Like I used to ask questions all the time, but you still start to feel like you were just, I definitely felt like I was a burden, right? I definitely felt like I was also a hard kid, right? I liked the word no. I challenged people, but my adoption definitely, like, that came later, right? I don't think I knew how to ask all those questions, but my parents were the type of people that said I love you too much, if that's even possible. But I think as I got older, I started being brave enough to ask those questions because sometimes it was just so hard, right? It was so hard. Like it was so fast. I was always in surgery. I was always different. And then Hannah and Grace were born and they both had their legs, right? And I don't think no matter how many questions you
Right.
ask as a kid, you can't
Right.
understand it.
And when you were older, you had a reunion with your birth family. How was that, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so that truly was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, right? I knew that she took time to name me. So my Russian name is Tatiana, and that's now my middle name. But I grew up knowing that I was different in every way, right? Even down to my birthday, right? I'm a leap year birthday. I have a birthday every 4 years, right? So I always felt this like this craziness that like I didn't even exist or I didn't matter. And even the calendar year confirmed that, right? Like every year it skipped me. So when I finally did meet my birth family, it was a point where I just really became comfortable talking. I talked to a Russian reporter and I just said, hey, like one day I would love to meet my family. And we didn't know what that looked like at that time, right? You don't know if she wants to even meet me or if anyone knew that she gave me up. I mean, she was so young. So, like, there's all these scenarios. And truly, I think I got one of the best ones. But while I was competing in London, a Russian reporter went and found them. And then I think once I got back from that competition in 2012, that Paralympics, NBC went over and I'll never forget it. I went to the orphanage I was adopted from and I hugged the woman who handed me over to my dad. And he should write a book, but he's like, crazy stuff. Like they had to keep the clothes. Like he couldn't keep the clothes I was in. Like stuff like that he remembers. But she said I was the only orphan to ever go back. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But then I met my birth family and I found out that my birth mom married my birth father and they had three children. So like it couldn't have been better, but it was still hard, right? Like all of my life I had spent being angry with her, being upset with the way I was born. But I think in that moment when I hugged her, I truly just felt this incredible power of forgiveness.
Yeah, so they had a family. Yeah, she was a person and she was probably really scared at 16. Were you able to kind of do that? How did you forgive
I
her?
knew I forgave her going into it, right? I don't have kids yet with my husband, but I cannot. I think that's going to be the next big phase of my life, right? Processing that. And I'm so grateful for therapy and just how much it has helped me. But I think I just knew like for so long I was just so angry, right? And anger was such a powerful emotion. It allowed me to win gold medals. It allowed
Right.
me to be the successful athlete. That was that push. When, practices were hard, like I was numb to pain. But I think for me, I just realized like to really truly try to think of it from her perspective. I think a lot of my life I was just like, well, she did this to me. And I still have every right to be angry, right? I have every reason, every excuse. I could totally be a textbook like, poor me. But I just have decided that I don't want to live my life that way. But also, it's just freedom to just truly forgive her and just to say, hey, like, I do forgive you. I release you. But I do know she really struggled to forgive herself.
How much about your life did they know? Because you were well into your career by then.
They knew a lot. I mean, enough that she had seen my oh, okay, this is crazy. Yes, they knew a lot. So I was named Tatiana after my birth mom's sister. And she knew I was Jessica Long in the Paralympics because I was rivals with like a Russian swimmer. So she had watched the Paralympics and knew who I was. And then
Oh,
years later it came out that I was like her niece. So like I think some of
you were the
them,
niece of.
my aunt Tatiana. So like she knew I was Jessica Long, the American, but then found out that I was like her niece Tatiana. Like it was a whole crazy thing.
Yes.
They definitely had pictures of me. I'm not sure if like it was all set up to look that way that they knew more about me, but I've been friends with them on Facebook for the last like 10 years now and get to see their lives. And my sister Anastasia has 2 kids. It's just so crazy because it's like I never thought I would have met them so young. And I thought that would come a lot later in my life.
How was that for Hannah? Hannah was your sister who you talk about in the book, and she helped you write the book. How was it for your siblings while you were going through what you went through?
Those conversations happen years later. Like I
Okay.
had originally asked my mom to come and here I am. I think I was 21 and I couldn't comprehend why she didn't want to come, right? Because she years later just said, I knew I couldn't be the support that you needed. And I remember that helped me a lot more years later. At the time, right? I'm 21. I couldn't understand it. It felt very truthfully, it felt really selfish, right? I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is only affecting me, right?
Yeah, right, right.
But I think years later, I realized when I had dinner with my dad when he was helping me pack up in Colorado. I've always lived out in Colorado all these years, but he just said, Jess, we were so scared that it wouldn't be a good situation for you. We didn't know what we were getting when we found out about your birth family. And like, it couldn't have been better, but they were like, we just didn't know. And at that time, my dad had taken off like 6 weeks with London. So he didn't have enough like time off to come for another 2 weeks. But Hannah was the perfect person. And it was so funny because like when we got off the plane, I think I literally was on the elliptical. Literally, I was like, I just need to work out. And I was on that elliptical, I think, for 3 hours. And I was like, what if my family doesn't want to see me? Like, what am I doing? Like, all of these emotions came flooding. But I think in that moment, I felt like I was doing it alone. But when I look back, obviously, I had so many people supporting me. And Hannah, I think there were moments it was hard, especially when I had a sister, Anastasia, where she was like, well, I'm your sister. It was so special doing like I could not imagine doing it with anyone else.
Do you speak Russian or was there a language barrier when you met them?
We had 3 translators and just crazy stuff. When I look back, I'm like, so much of it's a blur. Like there were so many delays and we were stuck. We were on an 18-hour train ride to visit them. Their village was 3 hours away. We were being followed. My story was all over. Like it was such a blur. And there's parts of me that's like, I wish I hadn't done the documentary, but also I would have never probably have met them if it wasn't for NBC, right? Like
Right,
it's hard. Like I
right.
can see like how great it was, but like being married now with my husband, I think the big talk is how can we get my birth mom to watch me swim my final Paralympics in LA?
Oh, yes.
Oh, oh. Do you look like your mom, your birth mom?
I was adopted into a family of all brunettes, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I have green eyes with gold, and like that was one memory with my sister and my mom. We all looked in like the mirror, and I was like, because years I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be like, who do I look like? Like I must look like someone. And my mom or my sister Hannah would just be like, oh, Jess, like all you have to do is look in the mirror, and that's like who you look like. But when I first met them, like I do really look like them, which is so weird because they're all blondes, and I'm like, oh, like
Oh, you're beautiful.
You're very
You're
beautiful.
beautiful on the
oh,
inside and the outside. We know
thank you.
that from your book. So, getting into how did you decide you wanted to be an athlete and how did that come about?
Yeah, so I think for me it's just super active all the time and I've always had so much energy. And I think that's because I knew what it was like to have to go in for surgery, rest and recover. A lot of my life was out of my control, right? I never asked to be an amputee. I didn't ask to have all these surgeries or to have to just sit back and let my body grow or like every time I grew, right, it was another surgery. So my life was a constant overcoming. And even today, like every day, like I put on my legs, I never know what's going to happen. But back then, as a little girl, right, I think I just really appreciated movement. And so my parents, they got me involved in gymnastics. They put me in pretty much every sport you can think of, but I really love gymnastics. But when I'm not wearing my legs, I was jumping on my knees. And they decided at that point we had to find a different sport. I'd always loved to swim. In my grandparents' backyard pool, I would swim in. So I joined a swim team, and I honestly just remember loving the fact that I didn't have to wear my legs, right? Because if you think about it, like imagine every day you walking in, not even just prosthetics, but your shoes each weighed about 7 to 8 pounds every day. And like they hurt you and they were heavy, and you just had to like take on life in that way. So for me, the water was just freedom, right? And it's still that way for me. It's still this freedom. And it truly, like, even when I think about it, it is the one sport that you can do from the time that you're a baby to the time that you're very old. It's so good for
Yeah.
your joints, it's so good for heart health. But for me, it gave me this whole level of freedom that nothing here on earth can really give me. I just take off my legs and I feel no different. Where even if I were to do gymnastics, I'm still landing on my knees. So I fell in love with swimming. I fell in love with the way that I was treated. I really thankfully was never really made fun of for my legs. And,
Mm.
my siblings would have taken care of it. But
Right.
no, I truly just I loved it, and I was really good at it. Like the water is this amazing place that even if your missing legs are tiny, right? Like I can get in the water and fly past people who are twice my height and size. Like it just gives me this freedom.
To excel, to just, like you said, to be free, to just
Yeah.
go, use your determination in all kinds of ways. And your children's book is The Mermaid with No Tail. Oh, it's so beautiful.
That's been really special. I think the biggest point with that book was just, when you look around, there was not always Barbies that looked like me. There wasn't dolls. Like I would cut my Barbie's legs off, right? And I think representation is so important where, my whole life I wanted someone to look like me, right? And it wasn't until I was 10 years old that I really saw other people that looked like me. And that takes a toll, right, on confidence. That's why sport is so important for young girls with confidence. But I really struggled, and I'll never forget this. Like, there was one year, my mom was so excited. We got these My Twin dolls, and these were like these huge things. Like, everyone was getting My Twin dolls, which is kind of creepy if you think about it. But I was so excited, and I was even too old for dolls, but I just was like, maybe this doll will actually look like me, right, with no legs. And I woke up on Christmas morning and Hannah's doll looked like her, and Grace's doll looked like her, and my doll looked like me but had legs. And I was like, this isn't a twin. Like, this isn't me. And I was so upset that whole Christmas. But even that, I couldn't articulate like how important just seeing something that looked like me meant. And I think that's why I wrote this book, right? Just with my dad. It's just the thing that makes you different is your greatest gift. And it's been really exciting to see just the difference and influence it's had on little kids. I've spoken at schools, like taken my legs off at schools.
Ah.
But yeah, it's really cute.
I read that you really didn't cry till you were later in life, but then you talk about in your book how strength is vulnerability. So, how did you come from there to there?
I think I always saw my mom crying over everything, and I was like, oh, that's so like not. Um, I truly think that if I had cried through my surgeries as a little kid, I wonder sometimes if I would have made it through. Right. And I do think at that point, I did not want to break. If I had broken, I don't know if I would have been able to pick myself up just because it was so hard. Right. I have memories of them through my surgeries, which happened like every 3 to 6 months, it felt like having draining tubes in my cast. So my leg would be in a cast and I'd have a draining tube all the way down in my leg, draining out the bursa and all this stuff. And the doctor's coming in with no pain medicine and literally yanking the tube out of my leg. Like I have these
Ah.
memories and being just so much pain, right? Like, and I've worked really hard in my therapy, but like, I just remember thinking that if I were to cry now over these things, how would I make it through as an amputee through the next surgery? So I think I just developed this really tough attitude and that seemed really strong. And everyone told me I was determined. And I just think it was very confusing also with my adoption on top of being an amputee, right? I've got all the circumstances. I just didn't understand crying, but I also was like, I'm not going to cry. And I can't remember if we put this in the book or not because it's been a little while, but I think I reached out for my dad's hand during one of my surgeries at 16. And I was like, I'm in so much pain. And you can't even, I mean, when they continue to cut your bone back after bone after bone, like there was a time that it came through my skin and I didn't even want to tell my family because I just wanted to keep playing. And I was playing at my in the pool. And I think it was just so hard. And it's so hard to even comprehend, but like I just truly didn't understand that like true strength and is being vulnerable, right? It is sharing my story with people. It is writing it down in books. And it's all about relating to others and hearing each other's story that gives us the strength to know that we can do it too.
And you do say that you don't have to prove your trauma to anybody, but you do have to take responsibility for your healing. And our healing is not always linear. And
Oh,
Dora and I
yeah.
were talking about that this morning. It's like grief. There are different phases and different seasons. So you kind of really talk about that. Because you had a lot of grief. I mean, it was a constant,
Yeah,
hit,
and it
then
doesn't
grief,
go
hit.
away. It doesn't go away completely, right? I still wake up without my legs, right? Someone will still wake up without maybe their loved one or a circumstance that they're going through. And it's how do you find a way to move forward? You don't forget it. I don't forget that I'm an amputee, but I look back on all of the hardest days and recognize, okay, I've made it this far. Even today, right? Like my legs, I have sores on my legs from traveling from Paris. But like it's not good, it can't stop you, right? You just have to recognize that it might be a bad day, but it's not a bad life.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
really try to live by that.
Yeah, geez. So you were 12 when you first went to Athens, is that
Yeah.
right? So you were still getting surgeries as you were competing as an Olympian.
Yeah, we had to schedule things out. And on top of that, I had like my appendix ruptured. I got my tonsils out. I was like, so I still have my wisdom teeth because I'm like, no, I am not getting another surgery yet.
I understand you're a strong advocate in the disability world. So, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, continuing to stand up for those who might not feel like they have a voice, right? I see it every day that this world was not designed for people with disabilities, whatever type of disability you have, right? It's definitely very confusing. I see it in my own life, right? I see even just the pretty privilege that I have, or the fact that my legs are not bad looking, right? Like, I see the way that people treat me, and I cannot imagine if I looked different or if I really struggled in other ways, right? Like I'm very mobile, but I see that the world is not designed for people in wheelchairs or just even parking and handicap parking. The amount of comments or notes that I was getting on my car was crazy. And it's a minority, right? And I think for me, just if I can use my platform at all for good, right? If I can impact one life, but I definitely really want to stand up for that and do more. I'm definitely struggling a little bit with my jet lag, but just I try to be an advocate in all sorts of ways. And whether that's my TikTok, even just showing people how I put my legs on or just letting people know, like, I think the biggest thing I get a lot is just like, oh, like she's still a pretty girl. Oh, she's still a successful girl without her legs. Or like she's still. And I'm like, let's get rid of the still. Like we just are. Like people with disabilities are incredible. We're not still incredible. Like I think it's changing that mindset and just recognizing that it is a minority and it's also a large minority. And you just never know, it could happen to anyone, right? You could be in a car accident, you could lose a leg, you could become paralyzed. I mean, I've witnessed some of the most amazing humans in the Paralympics through accidents, and they just find ways to continue moving forward.
It is incredible your determination. I mean, it just comes through. And again, looking at your accolades, we were like, whoa, wow. Four-time ESPY winner for Best Female Athlete with Disability. The world's best female athletes named in Sports Illustrated. You were twice named Disabled Swimmer of the Year by Swimming World magazine. I mean, this goes on and on. Emmy's presenter. What are you most proud of all these accolades? I mean, I didn't even read them all. 31-time Paralympic medalist, 18-time world championship participant, 54-time world champion medalist. Okay, it goes on. What are you most proud of? Or what do you identify with? Or how does this go for you?
I don't know. Oh, I'm like, does that all make me proud? I am proud of it. I hope it shows my hard work and my dedication. I'm very proud of my very first Paralympic gold medal. And I'm really proud of my last, which I think is this one. I think this was my 100 fly. But
Wow.
I think for a long time, the medals and the accolades totally consumed me, right? It was all of my worth. I totally just struggled with that measurement of love. I think that's what made Paris so special, just was like, can I do it again? Can I prove to others that I can do it again, or we can all do it again? I was really proud of the Super Bowl commercial. Even you
Oh,
naming
I
off
didn't
like
read that. Did I read that? Yeah, that the Super Bowl commercial in 2021. Okay, that too. Okay, go ahead.
I think for me, like, I've always struggled with winning categories in the disabled category because I'm like, why can't we all just be, we're just athletes. So like even that I'm like, ugh, I want to win it in the like, we're all just athletes. Let's just have a category of athletes. That's what we are. I'm not just an athlete with a disability, but yes, I get that. It's like, how do you figure that out? Okay. But I'm really proud of the Super Bowl commercial. And I think for me, that was something you just dream of, right? I can't purchase my own Super Bowl, like, right? Like, or the way
And
that
you couldn't
Toyota,
be so determined to do it. It
yeah,
just
like it's like
right.
you have to have someone else believe in you to do that. And I think Toyota has been such an example of showcasing their Paralympic team. They've supported just the Paralympic team, even with like we have a roster of Olympic and Paralympic athletes. But that one made me really proud. Like, that was almost like a pinch me, you made it moment, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love my Paralympic medals, but for so long, people confused me with the Special Olympics, right? Like, I've grown the Paralympic movement, but to me, the Super Bowl commercial felt like it was on equal playing field.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We have covered so much today, but there's so much more to talk about. So join us next week for the second part of this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Health Gig. We loved having you with us. We hope you'll tune in again next week. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and follow us on healthgigpod.com. I'm Tricia.
And I'm Doro.
Be well.